Welcome back to Swordman Josh Gaming and another deck tech. So Pioneer, it's the thing, and I've built a couple Pioneer decks. They always seem to be kind of pricey. The Tier 1 Pioneer decks are, in the realm of $400 to $600. Jund, I think, is up around the $700-800 mark. Pioneer does not have to be expensive. I put this deck together, and all total, it'll set you back. If you have the basic lands, and a lot of these are commons, this deck, to put it together, it may cost you $5 or $10. If you bought the whole thing from Card Kingdom right now, it's about $30 to $35. If you take out the lands, you take out another $2 of that. So at $30, you can have a Pioneer deck that you could play. That'll be a lot of fun. It'll win you some matches. It'll compete against all the decks. It's just a matter of what kind of draw you get versus what kind of draw they get, but that's a lot of magic anyways. But the whole point of this deck is to disrupt your opponent's hand, and a lot of decks can't deal with that, and we try to do it as fast as possible. So we have creatures that do it, we have spells that do it, and then we have creature removal in case we don't get something out of their hand before they play it. And then, of course, we have to have a little bit of card draw, and we have one finisher in the deck just in case the game goes long. So let's get into what we have. So, creature hand destruction. We are running 4 copies of Brain Maggot. It's an enchantment creature. And when it enters the battlefield, opponent reveals their hand. So in this deck, we also get to look at our opponent's hand regularly, so we know what we're up against. But they reveal their hand, and you choose a non-land card from it, and you put it underneath Brain Maggot, and it stays there until Brain Maggot leaves play. So we got 4 of those. Those are 2 drops, so on turn 2, you can disrupt their hand for 1. We can actually disrupt their hand for 1 on turn 1 also. So yeah, 4 copies of Brain Maggot. Now, I will get into this. It goes underneath the card here in a second, because we have a way of working with that. We have 3 Kitesail Freebooters, very similar to Brain Maggot, except instead of being a 1/1 on the ground, it's a 1/2 on the air, and you only get to take a non-creature or non-land card. So instant sorceries, enchantments, you can steal those with Kitesail Freebooter. Again, it goes underneath Kitesail Freebooter and exile until Kitesail Freebooter leaves play. We're not only trying to disrupt their hand, but we'll try to disrupt their deck as well. Nightveil Spectre. It's a 2/3 flyer. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they exile the top card of their library. And that's not under this card, that's just exiled for forever. So we can start eating away at their library. We're just trying to deny them every resource possible. And it's a 2/3 flyer with 3 black pips. For those of you, it increases our devotion count. Our finisher is actually Erebos the Black-Hearted. I'll get to that in a second. But, excuse me, yeah, it turns on Erebos quickly. And we are running 4 copies of that. Now, I talked about having cards underneath the Brain Maggots and underneath the Kitesails. Wasteland Strangler is one way to get rid of it and remove a creature at the same time. It's also devoid, so it can block creatures that have fear if you run across them or something like that. But when Wasteland Strangler enters the battlefield, you can put an opponent's own card that's in exile into their graveyard, and if you do, target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. This does not say that it has to be in regular exile. So if you go back to both Brain Maggot and Kitesail, the text says, sorry about the shine, exile that card until Brain Maggot leaves the battlefield. So if you take that card out of exile that was underneath Brain Maggot and you put it in their graveyard, then if Brain Maggot dies, they no longer get that card back. So there's a synergy there. And then also, hopefully, this is removal as well. So hopefully it's a 2-for-1. You put a card in their graveyard, which isn't that big of a deal, and you get -3/-3 on one of their creatures for 3 mana, and you destroy it. So hopefully we're talking about turn 1 hand disruption, turn 2 hand disruption. If they play something on turn 3, we remove that card, put it back into their graveyard, and destroy whatever they played. but we're running 4 copies of that. Also, hand destruction, we're running 4 copies of Yarok's Finlurker. This is just straight up, when it enters the battlefield, an opponent exiles a card from their hand. They get to pick it, so this can be good or bad. This will get lands out of their hand or other pieces that you can't target, but it's also has an extra ability of a black and 2. It gets +1/+1 till end of turn. You're probably not going to use that. 2 black pips towards your devotion. So those are almost all of our creatures. I got 2 more creatures that we run also, but I'll get into those with the removal section. But a pretty hefty removal suite there, but we're not done yet. So let's say we get in on turn 2 with attack on turn 3 with one of our creatures. We are running 2 copies of Drill Bit. Drill Bit has a spectacle cost. Hopefully you're always playing it for its spectacle cost. Its target player reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards the card. It's not into exile. It's just regular discard. But still, for 1 black mana, it allows us to get rid of more cards in their hand. Our turn 1 disruption is Spectre Shriek. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. If you do, that player exiles that card. If a non-black card is exiled this way, exile a card from your hand. So if you're not playing against another black player, then it can possibly have a downside of you having to exile a card also. But in the long run, it's probably going to be worth it. Our mana curve is very low. And to get something that's a combo piece or a power piece out of their hand, it's worth exiling one of our small creatures or something like that. So we're running 4 copies of that. Also, hand destruction / slowly take down their life is 3 copies of Davriel, Rogue Shadow Mage. So it's a Planeswalker. It's got 3 loyalty. It's pretty weak in terms of it's easy to destroy if they get anything on the board. But the beginning of your opponent's upkeep, if they have 1 or fewer cards in their hand, Davriel deals 2 damage to him, and it has a tick down ability of -1 to have a target player discard a card. So we're hopefully getting to the point by turn 4 or turn 5 that our opponent is having to top deck everything off of their library. If they get something out that our Finlurker, our Stranglers can't deal with that's greater than 3 power, we do have a small removal suite. Those who are astute will notice that these 2 cards are in different sleeves because they're in another one of my Pioneer decks. These are the only 2 copies of this I have, and to play it in this deck, of course, I just have to swap sleeves. But we are running 2 copies of Murderous Rider. The Swift In portion of it allows us to destroy a creature or planeswalker. You lose 2 life. That's the price we pay. But on the flip side, it has lifelink, and when it dies, we put it on the bottom of its library. So hopefully we play it, we lose 2 life, and then we can play it again later as a creature, and we gain that 2 life back. So it's a wash, and the Swift In is at instant speed. We are running 2 copies of Cast Down. Destroy target non-legendary creature for a black and a colorless, easy. And we are running 2 copies of Fatal Push. I happened to get these out of a mystery booster, so I went ahead and put them in here. Fatal Push is pretty much a staple within the format, and I happen to be lucky enough to pull 2 of them. And then what we have here is card draw and our finisher. So we're running 2 copies of Sign in Blood, which allows us to draw cards, but we lose life for it. Or if we just happen to need our opponent to lose 2 extra life at the end of a game, we can always have them draw 2 cards and them lose 2 life. That works too, because it's target players, so that works. Our finisher, or one of our, basically Davriel, our hand destruction, we just try to destroy their hand. But if we get into a little bit longer of a game, Erebos Blackhearted is basically our finisher for the deck, but it also serves as a card draw engine. So it's 5/6. Hopefully our devotion gets turned on quickly with just 2 creatures on board, whether that be, any 2 things on board if one of them happens to be our, I don't have all the names of these. The Night Veil Spectre. If one of them happens to be the Night Veil Spectre, and we have Erebos on board, we only need one other permanent on board, and Erebos is turned on. Yes, this is the foil constellation Erebos that you guys saw me open out of Collector's Booster. But whenever another creature you control dies, you can pay 2 life and draw a card. That's fine and dandy. For black and a colorless, you can sack a creature. Target creature gets -2/-1 until end of turn. The only thing I really wish they would have done with this card, it would have fit on theme for black more, would have been to make that -1/-2. -2/-1 or -2/-0 is more of a blue thing. Blue seems to sack power from creatures, while black seems to sack toughness. So that's the only change I wish I had. But this is our finisher. And more card draw, and also card draw. We are running 4 copies of Castle Lock Thwain. This deck will want to dump its hand and destroy your opponent's hand as quickly as possible, so we refill with Castle Lock Thwain. 4 copies of Castle Lock Thwain and 19 swamps. That's it. This is mono black hand destruction for Pioneer on a budget. Hopefully you guys like this deck. It's a whole lot of fun to play. I've goldfished it a lot. I'm going to be playing it this weekend with my stepson, and hopefully he detests it as much as I love goldfishing this deck. On a regular basis, if you look at the fact that your opponent is typically going to be playing lands out of their hand for the first couple of turns, and then the hand disruption we have, typically by turn 4, our turn 4, their turn 3, or our turn 5, their turn 4 if we go first, we have eliminated their entire hand, and they are to the point of top decking, which is a very good place to be, especially with us having targeted removal and things like that. So if you like this deck, or if you want to see other budget decks, I have budget Pauper Commander decks. I think I have, probably some other budget decks here and there. Let me know down below what you'd like to see. I can always try to make a budget deck around something that somebody is interested in. So if you're curious about something, let me know. Hit the like button, hit that bell notification to let me know that it'll let you know when I stream. I also need to start putting my Twitter account into my notes. And as always, it's going to be a long weekend. May Keep Calm Kitty be with you. Y'all have a great